Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere even more uncomfortable than a family WhatsApp group chat. Victorian England, home of top hats, tea, and jobs so humiliating you'd wish your boss just put you on unpaid leave. Forget Downton Abbey and foggy romance novels. We're diving under the shiny carriages and straight into the gutter, sometimes literally, to meet the unsung heroes who cleaned, scraped, and occasionally exploded their way through the dirtiest work the 19th century had to offer. Before we trudge ankle-deep into sewage together, take a second to like the video and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy this sort of thing. Leave a comment telling me your favourite modern job you'd absolutely quit on day one if it meant scraping gum off Queen Victoria's shoe. Or maybe just let me know what time you're listening at and where you are from. Now, dim those lights, pop on a fan for some nighttime ambience, and find your coziest spot. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to spend 12 hours a day, waist deep, in London's sewage? How about climbing inside a narrow chimney while a stranger prods you with a stick? Could you stomach scrubbing other people's underwear for £1 a week? Or would you develop a mysterious Victorian illness just to avoid it? What if your job was so foul that people crossed the street just to avoid making eye contact? And most importantly, would you last a single day? Or would you be sprinting for the nearest railway out of town, clutching your dignity and whatever was left of your sense of smell? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1852. The air smells like coal, rain and regret. Your job title is so humiliating that even the rats are judging you. Welcome to the worst jobs in Victorian England. Let's begin. It's midnight in London, and you're already knee-deep in other people's business. As a night soil collector, your glamorous task is scooping, carting, and disposing of human waste. Forget working from home. Your office is the city's privy, your clients are everyone, and your retirement plan is not dying of dysentery. Every shift is a race against sunrise, and your own gag reflex. Let's talk about your tools of the trade. You're armed with a battered wooden shovel, a couple of dented buckets, and a cart so rickety it's one bad pothole away from joining you in the gutter. Your uniform? It's whatever you wore yesterday, now accessorized with stains you stopped trying to identify after week 1. Gloves? Only if you fancy yourself posh, because most collectors just use what nature gave them. Calloused hands, a strong stomach, and the desperate hope that your boots don't have any new holes. You move through the silent streets like a reverse Santa, except instead of delivering joy, you're removing last night's regrets from every privy and chamber pot in a 6-block radius. The city is dark, the gas lamps casting just enough light to remind you that, yes, you are indeed handling buckets of night soil, Victorian for, let's say, the contents of everyone's internal regrets. The air is thick, humid, and somewhere between old stew and fermented cabbage. Every breath is a gamble, every splash, a potential life-altering event. The job requires stealth and speed. The unwritten rule of night soil collection is simple. Don't be seen, don't be smelled, and for heaven's sake, don't spill anything. You learn to walk softly, carry your buckets low, and avoid eye contact with anyone peering out of a window. Privacy is non-existent, but dignity is somehow still negotiable. You might spot a passing constable giving you a wide berth, or a stray dog following your cart. Hopeful for a midnight snack, it's a strange kind of celebrity. Everyone knows you, but nobody wants to admit it. By 2 a.m., you're sweating through every layer you own. Even though the London night is cold and damp, your cart is heavier now, wheels grinding under the weight of the city's collective embarrassment. The mud in the street mingles with things best left undescribed, and the sound of your boots squelching becomes a lullaby that only a true night soil collector could appreciate. Your only real company is the gentle slosh of your cargo and the occasional rat, who probably outranks you on the Victorian social ladder. Let's pause to compare. Modern folks complain about their work emails, about Karen in accounting microwaving fish, about the existential despair of group chats. but your inbox is a street full of privies, and your reply all involves hauling 40 pounds of organic misery through a maze of cobblestones and horse droppings. Would you trade 100 Monday meetings for one night behind the night soil cart? Don't answer too quickly. Still, there are perks. If you survive, you're paid in hard coin, not gratitude. Night soil is valuable. There's a thriving trade for the stuff among farmers and market gardeners. Waste not, want not is more than a motto. It's your business plan. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll overhear the wealthy grumble about the smell as they close their windows, oblivious to the fact that you're the reason their prized roses bloom in spring. But the hazards are real. A slip on a frosty step, a careless tip of the bucket, or a sudden downpour can turn a bad night into a legendary disaster. Disease is always lurking. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery, the Victorian starter pack. No one thanks you. You don't get tips. You do, however, develop a heroic tolerance for disgust, and a sixth sense for when it's time to sprint away from a collapsing privy wall. By sunrise, your work is done. You roll your empty cart back through streets, slowly waking up to the smell of bread and coal fires, leaving behind a city that's clean, at least for another day. You, meanwhile, trudge home, hoping no one recognizes you without your buckets, and praying your neighbors haven't figured out why your roses always look so suspiciously healthy. You collapse into bed, proud in a way only the most humble jobs allow, knowing you did the dirty work so others didn't have to. And with that, you drift off to sleep, dreaming of a world where the worst thing you have to clean up is a spilled latte. You're 8 years old, which means you're old enough to climb inside a soot-choked chimney while a grown man yells at you from below, armed with a brush and a cough that would worry Dr. Watson. Your job is to wriggle up flues tighter than a Victorian corset, scraping soot while desperately hoping you don't get stuck. Bonus: your uniform is just dirt. Let's set the scene. It's the kind of grey, damp London morning where the sun is just a rumour. You've barely finished your bowl of yesterday's porridge before you're marched out the door. Boots 2 sizes too big, hair already half sticky with yesterday's soot. At the corner, you meet your master, a man whose job is to ensure you don't die, but only because replacing you would cost him a whole shilling. He hands you your only tools, a stiff brush, a burlap sack, and a smile that says, "Try not to cry today." Your first task: wedge yourself into the fireplace and look up. It's pitch black, and the air smells of old fires and anxious children. You hesitate, because of course you do. But there's a nudge, a stern word, and in you go. Inside the chimney, it's like crawling up the throat of a sleeping dragon, dark, claustrophobic, and sooty enough to black out your memory of daylight. Every inch of progress means elbows scraping brick, knees banging against the wall, and the constant gentle fall of soot into your eyes, ears, and, if you're unlucky, open mouth. You become an expert at holding your breath, not for drama, but because the alternative is coughing yourself straight back down the flue. Outside, the city is bustling. Inside, it's just you, the echo of your own heartbeat, and the distant voice of your master. Hurry up, boy. The brush in your hand is half use, half prop. Sometimes it actually scrapes away the worst soot. Sometimes it's just something to cling to when your foot finds a narrow ledge, or you hit a patch where the chimney narrows and you need to twist like a human corkscrew. The work is hot in the summer, freezing in the winter, and always covered in a soft layer of Victorian misery. But wait, it gets better. The risk of getting stuck is real, and not in a ha-ha, stuck in a sweater kind of way. Chimney flues twist, narrow, and surprise you with turns that make you question the sanity of whoever designed them. You learn to breathe shallow, to ignore the itch. And above all, not to panic when you realize your shoulders don't fit the way they used to. Occasionally, you'll get wedged tight enough that you have to shout for help. If you're lucky, your master will haul you out with a rope. If not, well, there's a reason Victorian newspapers have so many tragic headlines about chimney sweeps found too late. On a good day, you emerge victorious, trailing soot, coughing and blinking in the daylight like a startled mole. Your reward? A crust of bread, a slap on the back, not helpful when your lungs are already full of black dust, and the knowledge that you've done a job that adults literally pay not to do. Modern complaints about toxic workplaces have nothing on the Victorian chimney. Yours is toxic, cramped, and comes with a side order of black lung by age 15. Let's compare. While your modern counterpart whines about cleaning a lint trap or changing an air filter, you, the Victorian sweep, have spent your morning acting as a living bottle brush for a 4-story townhouse. There's no escape, no unions, and no hope of promotion unless you count still alive as a career path. Safety standards are just 2 words the Victorians have never heard in the same sentence. By day's end, you're sooty from your hair to your socks, which is impressive considering your socks probably have more holes than fabric. The bathhouse is a distant dream. Most days, you wash in a cold bucket or don't bother at all. You're recognizable in the street, not because you're famous, but because the city's birds avoid you and other children step aside to let your personal cloud of soot drift by. Still, you find little victories, racing the other sweeps to see who can finish fastest, carving your initials into the brick on a particularly tight flue, dreaming that someday you might be too big to fit. Until then, you crawl, you scrape, and you cough, hoping the next chimney is just a bit wider, or at the very least, that today isn't the day the sweep gets swept away. And so ends another shift as the human soot scrubber. Your pay? A few pennies, a head full of soot, and a story nobody wants to hear at dinner. But hey, at least you don't have to explain what you do for a living. The dirt speaks for itself. Fancy a stroll in the swamp? Hope you enjoy leeches, because your job is to wade barefoot into the nearest marsh, letting hundreds of slimy freeloaders latch onto your legs so you can pry them off and sell them to doctors. It's wet, itchy, and occasionally you lose a pint of your own blood. The only benefit. You never need to pack lunch. The leeches will do that for you. Let's set the scene. It's dawn, the air is thick with fog, and the local geese have more job security than you. Your uniform? Rolled up trousers, a shirt so tattered it looks like a survivor of a minor explosion, and nothing on your feet but the chilling knowledge of what's lurking beneath the surface. You stare into the murky water, shivering not just from the cold but from anticipation. A normal person might run screaming from a leech. You, the Victorian leech collector, are hoping for a bumper crop. There's a technique to it, of course, nothing as dignified as a fishing rod or a net. No, you simply shuffle into the water, legs exposed, and wait. It's a bit like fly fishing, if the flies were you and the catch was an army of tiny vampires. Within seconds, you feel the unmistakable tickle of leeches attaching themselves. Some people talk about embracing nature. You are being embraced by it, one sticky suction cup at a time. The work is surprisingly competitive. Doctors and barbers are desperate for your slimy harvest, after all. Leech therapy is the cure-all for everything from headaches to, well, just not being upper class enough. Leeches are currency in Victorian medicine, and you're the bank. Each successful collection day means more leeches for the jars, more coins in your pocket, and more mysterious faintness as you wobble home, feeling like you've donated blood at a discount. The process is painfully repetitive. You wade, you wait, you flinch as a leech finds an untested bit of ankle. Then you pluck them off, carefully. Because a broken leech is a wasted leech. And the only thing worse than being covered in them is being covered in angry ones. Sometimes you'll spot a particularly fat specimen and feel a moment of pride, followed immediately by the sensation of blood trickling down your leg. You get used to the sight of your own ankles looking like a map of tiny red pinpricks. The hazards, naturally, are part of the job. There are the leeches themselves. Some are stubborn enough to refuse to let go, no matter how much you bribe them with salt. Then there's the local wildlife, frogs, rats, and the occasional suspicious eel, all of whom seem intent on judging your life choices. You try not to think about what else is in the water with you. After a few weeks, you become immune to embarrassment and, more impressively, to any sensation below the knees. Let's compare this to modern life. You know that feeling when your phone battery is draining, and you can almost sense it leaching energy from your soul? Multiply that by 100, add some literal blood loss, and a smell that would make a skunk rethink its career. The closest anyone today comes is maybe battling mosquitoes at a picnic, except you're not even allowed the dignity of slapping them away. Yet, in a strange way, you become known in your community. Children point at you, adults pretend not to notice, and the local doctor greets you with suspicious enthusiasm. "Bring me a fresh dozen next week, would you?" he says, as if you're supplying apples instead of little tubes of misery. Sometimes you get lucky and sell to an apothecary who pays you with a half-penny and a story about how leeches saved his cousin's cat. At the end of the day, you limp home, slightly dizzy, a jar of wriggling leeches at your side, and a nagging suspicion that you're definitely not charging enough for this service. You scrub your legs in a bucket, count your coins, and wonder if you should try your luck at chimney sweeping or mudlarking instead. At least those jobs don't suck the literal life out of you. But you keep going, because someone has to keep the leech supply flowing. And it turns out, you're the best in the business. And if your doctor is happy, your family gets fed, and your toes are still attached, you call that a win. Itchy, bloodless, and slightly wobbly, but a win all the same. If you love laundry, you'll adore fulling. Take rough, scratchy wool, stomp on it in a vat of urine, yes, urine, and try not to inhale. Your reward is a cleaner cloth and the permanent loss of your sense of smell. Local dogs follow you everywhere, for reasons you wish they didn't. Let's step into your shoes, or rather, into your soaking, suspiciously yellow work boots. It's the crack of dawn, and your day begins not with the gentle clatter of a washing machine, but with the squelch of ancient wool underfoot and a cloud of aromatic doom wafting up to greet you. Fulling is the technical term, but let's be honest, you're really a human agitator, powered by breakfast, desperation, and whatever resilience your nostrils have left. Your workplace is a wooden shed with a single window, and it's not for ventilation, it's so your boss can check you haven't run away. Inside, barrels line the walls, each brimming with stale urine collected from the entire neighborhood. Everyone's in on the act, children, grandparents, the baker's apprentice, all contributing to your unique workplace ambiance. Some people dream of job perks, you just dream of a breeze. The process is as glamorous as it sounds. First, you and your fellow fullers dump heaps of greasy wool into the vat, making sure every strand is thoroughly soaked in eau de paix. Then, you get in and start stomping, sometimes with bare feet, sometimes with wooden clogs if you're feeling dainty. The point is to bash, tread, and squish the fibers so the cloth shrinks, thickens, and, theoretically, gets clean. Every stomp releases a new wave of perfume, strong enough to wake a sleeping goat at 50 paces. You might be wondering, why urine? Well, welcome to Victorian chemistry. Before detergents, ammonia-rich urine was the best thing going for breaking down oils and dirt in wool. It's natural, it's plentiful, and it's free, just like your dignity, which you definitely left behind somewhere around the second barrel. Fulling is one of those rare jobs where the natural method actually means completely revolting and medically inadvisable. Let's talk hazards. Fuller's feet are legendary. Tough as old boots, pruny for life, and slightly tinted yellow, even on their best days. Splinters, chilblains, and mystery rashes are part of the package. The fumes are so strong that your eyes water all day, and you start hallucinating your old life choices drifting by in the steam. Dogs adore you, cats avoid you, and even the neighborhood rats think twice before venturing too close. For 12 hours, you stomp, turn the cloth, and occasionally gag, until your boss finally waves you out for a lunch break. Not that you can eat much, everything tastes faintly of ammonia, and your sandwich has absorbed the house special aroma. Conversations with other fullers tend to be philosophical. Do you think we'll ever smell anything again? Remember bread? Has anyone seen my other sock? Or did it dissolve? Meanwhile, your work is vital to the city. Finished wool means people get new coats, blankets, and hats. You, the humble fuller, are the unsung hero behind every respectable wardrobe. Not that you'll ever wear any of it. You're lucky if you get a second-hand scarf that doesn't double as a dog toy. Modern complaints about laundry day. Shrinking your favorite shirt, running out of detergent, losing socks, are nothing compared to your world. You're living in a soup of communal regret, massaging fabric with your toes until the water is more soup than liquid. If you ever do complain, your friends, who can smell you coming a block away, will simply nod in sympathy and move a little further down the pub bench. At day's end, you stagger home with a nose full of memories and a feeling that you'll never be truly clean again. You might try washing your feet in the river, but the river's on strike. Even your mother suggests you sleep in the shed, just until you air out. But hey, your work keeps the city clothed and the dogs delighted. You may never regain your sense of smell, but you will always have job security, after all. Someone has to do the dirty work, and you, dear Fuller, are the undisputed king of the stink. So, next time you throw your laundry in the machine, remember the Fullers. And maybe light a candle, just in solidarity. You scour the city for one thing, and one thing only, dog droppings. Pure is what the tanners call it, and they'll pay you pennies to collect it in a bucket for leather processing. You quickly become immune to shame and to being invited to dinner. Let's get into character. The sun rises over Victorian London, and while others are heading to shops and counting their shillings, you grab your trusty bucket and step boldly into the world's worst scavenger hunt. Pure finding is a job for the thick-skinned, the strong-stomached, and the profoundly unconcerned with anyone's opinion. Your work uniform? Whatever you wore yesterday, plus a look of quiet resignation and the faint hope that today will rain, washing away some of your stock. Your competition isn't exactly fierce, turns out. Not many dream of a career in canine contributions. Still, you have to move fast. The best patches are staked out early, especially near the posh townhouses where fancy lapdogs deposit their most valuable assets. You become an expert in canine routes, morning routines, and the subtle art of not stepping on your own payday. It's not just a walk in the park. Every step is a negotiation between pride and profit. You get some odd looks. Children point, grandmothers mutter. The occasional street urchin may try to tip your bucket for a laugh. But you, seasoned entrepreneur that you are, ignore them all. Your job is essential, at least. That's what you mutter to yourself when you catch a whiff of your own shoes. Now, here's the science part. Pure isn't just a clever name. It's a crucial ingredient for tanners, who need the stuff to soften leather, strip hair from hides, and generally work their mysterious, smelly magic. There's even a rumour, started, no doubt, by a desperate tanner, that Pure gives leather a rich, desirable finish. The reality, it gives your bucket a rich, undesirable aroma. Still, supply and demand rule all, and you've found your niche. You might be surprised at how quickly your sense of shame disappears. By your third day on the job, you'll find yourself discussing grades of poo with a level of seriousness most people reserve for fine wine. Good morning, Mrs. Jenkins. Your terrier's contributions are, as always, most appreciated. You begin to recognize the difference between old, dried, pure, useless, and the fresh, glistening variety that tanners prize. If you're really unlucky, someone's dog mistakes your boot for a target, saving you a step but costing you dignity. The hazards are many. There's the smell, of course, which lingers no matter how many times you wash. Soap isn't strong enough. Nothing short of divine intervention could get rid of it. Stray dogs follow you, assuming you're carrying snacks. Shopkeepers refuse you entry. Even rats seem to keep a respectful distance, which is an achievement in itself. Let's compare. Modern dog walkers pick up after their pets with a tiny bag, muttering about civic duty. You, the Victorian pure finder, would laugh in their sanitized faces if laughter didn't threaten to spill your bucket. There's no leave, no trace policy here. Your whole business model is built on finding every trace and then selling it at market rate. The social life of a pure finder is, let's say, limited. You're not exactly top of the guest list for tea parties. Friends learn to wave from a safe distance. Your family claims not to know you at the market. If someone does invite you over, it's usually so you can clear their garden for free. Still, you develop a sense of humor about it. What else can you do when your legacy is measured in shovels, not statues? At the end of a long day, your bucket full and your pride somewhat lighter, you haul your wares to the tannery. The tanner greets you with a nod and a clothespin on his nose, weighing your collection with professional detachment. A few pennies richer, you trudge home, dreaming of a job with less olfactory excitement. Maybe chimney sweeping, at least the soot washes off. You clean your boots as best you can, set your bucket by the door, and fall asleep content in the knowledge that you are the unsung hero of London's leather goods. Tomorrow the hunt continues, because as long as there are dogs and shoes to be made, the city will always need a pure finder. Low tide is your time to shine. Armed with a stick and infinite optimism, you wade through the Thames' stinking mud, hoping to find lost coins, scrap metal, or anything worth selling. The smell never leaves, and neither does the suspicion that your treasures are mostly someone else's bad luck. Let's set the scene. It's dawn, and the city's still half asleep, while respectable folk snuggle in their beds or trudge off to honest toil. You're ankle deep in one of the world's most aromatic mud baths. The Thames has receded, bearing its greasy underbelly, a wasteland of shattered pottery, rusty nails, and the occasional mystery object that may or may not be a cursed family heirloom. Your uniform is whatever can survive a daily mud assault, and your hands have permanent brown half-moons under the nails, no matter how often you wash. Mudlarking isn't just a job, it's an endurance sport. Every step is a squelch, every find a gamble. The city's filth, flushed into the river by last night's rain, is now your office. You poke, prod, and dig with your stick, hoping for the dull clink of metal instead of the far more common squish of something best left unidentified. You quickly become fluent in mudlark body language. The hop of excitement, the sigh of disappointment, and the universal groan of someone discovering yet again that the coin they found is actually just a slug with ambition. The competition is fierce. Dozens of other mudlarks are out with you, men, women, and children, all combing the shoreline in silent, muddy solidarity. Everyone's got their own favourite stretch. Beneath the bridge, good for nails and fishhooks. Near the docks, great for lost cargo, bad for keeping your shoes. Or right outside the tavern, where fortunes and dignity are lost in equal measure. There's an unspoken rule. If you see it first, it's yours, unless you want to arm wrestle an 11-year-old who's seen more of the Thames than you've seen daylight. Let's talk about the treasures. On a lucky morning, you might find a halfpenny, a broken silver brooch, or a copper pipe worth enough to buy bread, and maybe even a pint. More often, it's bones, shattered mugs, or a mysterious lump of something metallic and definitely not valuable. Every once in a while, a mudlark strikes it rich, a gold ring, a lost watch, a chunk of coal large enough to keep a family warm. Those stories keep you going, even as you fish yet another bent nail from the muck. Hazards? You wouldn't believe the hazards. The mud sucks at your boots with jealous desperation, and every so often someone steps too deep and has to be yanked out by their mates, shoeless but grateful to be above ground. The river isn't just muddy, it's teeming with all the bacteria Victorian London can produce. A tiny scratch can turn into an infection faster than you can say antiseptic hasn't been invented yet. You develop a sixth sense for where to step, and an iron stomach for the occasional whiff of decomposing well. Best not to think about it. Modern folks talk about thrifting and upcycling, but you, dear mudlark, are the original master of making do. Lost a glove? Find one in the mud. Need a spoon? Here's one from 3 centuries ago, just waiting for a wash and a tetanus shot. Every object tells a story, usually about poverty, desperation, or a very clumsy sailor. Still, there's pride in your finds. even if most of them end up on the scrap heap by week's end. Social status? You're the lowest of the low, unless you count the rats, who treat you as an equal. Shopkeepers eye you warily. People give you a wide berth on the street, partly because of the smell, partly because nobody wants to be reminded how close we all are to ending up in the mud. Yet there's a camaraderie among mudlarks, a shared nod, a quiet joke, an occasional act of kindness when someone finds something truly special and shares the spoils. At the end of the day, your treasures are piled high. A handful of coins, maybe a pocket knife, a couple of brass buttons, and enough stories to last a lifetime. You trudge home, feet caked, pockets heavy with river loot and hope. You might be poor, but you're rich in tenacity and optimism. And in a city like Victorian London, sometimes that's the only treasure worth holding on to. So if you ever lose something valuable near the river, just remember, someone's out there poking through the mud, hoping your bad luck is about to become their lucky day. The palace has a secret. Someone has to clear out the royal privies. That someone is you, the Gong farmer. Your uniform is waders, your tool is a bucket, and your main perk is being allowed to work at night, so fewer people see you. Your memoir will be called 50 Shades of Brown. Let's set the stage. It's long past midnight, and while London's high society are snoring in featherbeds, you're quietly slipping down palace corridors, lanterns swinging, on your way to the castle's most dangerous and, let's be honest, aromatic assignment. You're a specialist, a night shift ninja in rubber boots, and your expertise is not so much appreciated as it is desperately needed. The only people who notice you are the rats, and even they move aside respectfully. Your route is mapped out in buckets. The royal privies, polite for giant holes in the floor that smell like yesterday's regrets, wait for your careful attention. Each pit is a ticking time bomb of embarrassment. You know every creak of the palace floors, every stone step down to the dark, echoing chambers beneath the main halls. Down here, it's just you, your thoughts, and a mountain of the monarchy's least favourite exports. The first step is always the hardest, physically and emotionally. Your waders are patched and stained in shades that defy description. Your gloves are thicker than your skin, but not quite thick enough for the job ahead. Armed with your battered bucket and a long-handled scoop, you get to work. The process is straightforward. Scoop, shovel, heave and haul. The challenge is doing it while breathing through your mouth and pretending you're on a lovely seaside holiday. What's in the bucket? Well, let's just say the royal diet is rich and varied, and you know exactly how the Queen takes her tea by the evidence left behind. The aroma is so powerful you consider investing in a personal perfume called Eau de Denial. Every scoop echoes with the ghosts of meals past and 1,000 unspoken palace secrets. You learn to work quickly, speed is your friend, and so is the idea that no one will ever recognize you in daylight. By 2 a.m., your cart is loaded with buckets, each heavier than your sense of self-worth. The trip from the privy pits to the dumping ground is a treacherous obstacle course of slippery flagstones and ominous shadows. Should you slip, you become a legend, a cautionary tale, and the subject of every kitchen joke for the next decade. But you don't slip. You move with the careful grace of someone who's made a solemn vow. I will never spill this bucket, no matter what. Gong farming is not just for the palace. City streets, inns, and even the homes of the very wealthy all require your services. The only difference between you and the palace staff is the scale and, occasionally, the quality of what you collect. Everyone creates waste. Not everyone pays as well as royalty to have it spirited away before breakfast. Let's compare. Modern plumbing whisks everything away at the press of a handle. Your plumbing is you, sweaty, sleep-deprived, and perpetually one wrong step away from disaster. People today grumble about cleaning the bathroom. You, meanwhile, are cleaning for the bathroom. Your tool belt isn't full of wrenches, but hope and a very strong stomach. And yet, you have your own kind of status. Everyone knows you're essential. even if no one wants to make eye contact. Palace gossip circulates about that brave soul in the brown boots. Sometimes you're tipped by grateful servants. Sometimes the nobility pretend you don't exist at all. You learn to appreciate the little things, a quiet corner for a break, a mug of strong tea that only almost smells like your day job, the satisfaction of leaving a pit empty and the palace just a bit cleaner. At the end of your shift, you head home in the early dawn, passing by city folk who wrinkle their noses but secretly thank their lucky stars they aren't you. Your boots come off at the door, and you leave them outside for the neighbourhood cats to ponder. You sleep deeply, knowing you've earned every penny and every long soak in the washtub. Tomorrow, it all begins again. But tonight, you can rest easy, proud of a job that's dirty, dangerous, and completely indispensable. Because let's face it, without the Gong farmer, even royalty would be up to their knees in it. You're stationed at a busy intersection, armed with nothing but a broom and the hopes of a penny tip. Your job, clear a path through ankle, deep sludge for wealthy pedestrians. Rain or shine, your only competition is horse manure, and you're definitely losing. Let's paint the picture. It's the crack of dawn in Victorian London, and already the air is a fragrant blend of coal smoke, fried onions, and something that could politely be called street perfume. You, the humble crossing sweeper, take your position on the edge of chaos, a bustling crossroads where wheels rattle, boots squelch, and the only thing more dangerous than an oncoming carriage is a flying clump of unknown origin. Your broom is worn to a nub, your boots are mostly theoretical, and your biggest hope for the day is that nobody steps on your foot or into your carefully swept patch of slightly less muddy street. The city's endless parade of horses, carts, and hurrying people makes for a street surface that is, generously speaking, organic. It's a living, breathing carpet of mud, rotting cabbage, and a generous sprinkling of things best not described in a sleep story. Every time it rains, which is often, the puddles deepen, and your job gets exponentially more impossible. You sometimes wonder if you're sweeping a river, or just participating in a slow, public performance of futility. Your clients are the well-to-do, the grand ladies and gentlemen who cannot possibly risk soiling their polished boots or delicate skirts. Their expectations, spotless crossings, immediate service, and, if possible, a cheerful tip of the cap. In reality, most sweepers receive nothing but a glare and the lingering memory of someone's umbrella poking them in the ear. The most generous will flip you a penny, which is just enough to buy a crust of bread and another day of existential doubt. Let's talk technique. It's not just about brute force, it's about strategy, speed, and knowing exactly how much filth the city will let you push aside before the next parade of hooves undoes your morning's work. You develop an eye for puddle dynamics, the physics of slush, and the subtle difference between firm footing and instant regret. Sometimes you sweep in wide, theatrical arcs. Other times, you work quietly, clearing just enough for a single pair of boots to pass in regal, almost clean procession. Competition is fierce. You're not the only sweeper on the block, and territory disputes are common. Some sweepers guard their crossings like junkyard dogs, others roam, sweeping wherever the crowds thicken. Rivalries form, alliances are made and broken. Occasionally, you're outmaneuvered by a child with a smaller broom and bigger eyes, who collects twice as many tips by looking especially pitiful. You respect the hustle, even if it costs you your lunch. The hazards of the job are as obvious as they are endless. There's the weather, rain that soaks you to the bone, wind that whips dirt into your eyes, and the kind of cold that makes your fingers feel like icicles wrapped in damp socks. There's traffic, dodging runaway carriages, irate drivers, and the always unpredictable street dogs. And then there's the constant risk of getting swept aside by the police if you're too aggressive or too slow. Modern commuters might grumble about stepping in a puddle, but you, the Victorian sweeper, laugh at such complaints. You face a day-long barrage of mud, manure, and casual indifference, armed with nothing but stubbornness and a vague dream of upward mobility. Maybe one day you'll sweep outside a department store instead of a gin shop. But amid the drudgery, there are moments of absurd triumph. A well-dressed lady gives you a grateful nod. A child giggles at your dramatic sweeping style. Someone actually thanks you for your work. A moment so rare, you replay it in your mind until the next rainstorm washes it away. As twilight falls and the city's lamps flicker to life, you gather up your broom, your collection of pennies, and your pride. Your patch of street is just as filthy as when you started, but for a few shining moments, you helped someone stay clean. You walk home, boots squelching, knowing tomorrow it all begins again. But tonight, you're the unsung hero of the intersection, the original human windshield wiper, keeping Victorian London moving one muddy crossing at a time. You stand on a cold corner, hawking cheap matches to anyone with a penny and pity. The work is thankless, the pay is worse, and by the end of winter you've inhaled enough phosphorus to glow in the dark. If you're really unlucky, your hands catch fire, literally. Let's set the scene. It's another damp, grey London morning, and you're bundled in every scrap of clothing you own, which, let's be honest, isn't much. The city buzzes around you, carriages rattling by, men and women bustling off to shops and offices, all while you hold your little tray of matches with frozen fingers. Matches, penny a box. You call out, hoping someone looks at you with a little sympathy or, better yet, a little loose change. The matchstick trade is where optimism goes to freeze. There's nothing glamorous about your spot on the curb. If you're lucky, it's only raining. If you're unlucky, the wind whips straight through your threadbare sleeves and your nose goes numb before you've made your first sale. Sometimes people hurry past without so much as a glance, eyes fixed on the horizon, pretending you're part of the street furniture. Sometimes they stop, peer at your red raw hands, and then shake their heads with a sigh, saving their charity for the next child unlucky enough to be born Victorian. You sell what you can, boxes and bundles of tiny fire hazards, each one carefully dipped in phosphorus by people only slightly better off than you. The chemicals are strong, the smell unmistakable. After a day in your presence, even the neighbourhood dogs think twice before begging for scraps. The matches are unreliable, sometimes lighting with a fizz, sometimes breaking in half, occasionally sparking into your palm when you try to demonstrate their quality. Occupational hazard, they say. You just call it Tuesday. The hazards don't end there. If you're very unlucky, you're not just a match seller, you're a matchmaker, working back in the factory when business on the street is slow. There, your days are spent dipping splinters of wood into buckets of toxic slop. It's warm at least, but the air is heavy with fumes, and the other children are missing teeth or carrying the telltale pale skin of phossy jaw, a disease so horrific it makes toothache sound like a vacation. You learn to hustle. Street corners are claimed territory. Older boys and girls will defend their patches with elbows and harsh words. There are always newcomers, always desperate kids hoping to swap cold fingers for a warm meal. Some days you barely sell enough to buy a crust of bread. Other days you return home with empty pockets and the taste of failure, which is suspiciously similar to the taste of phosphorus. Let's compare. Modern kids might have lemonade stands, pleading eyes behind card tables stacked with cupcakes. You, the Victorian matchstick seller, are part entrepreneur, part street performer, part human hazard warning. The only customer loyalty program is hoping the same old lady who bought a box last week needs another. There's no bonus for working overtime, no employee of the month, just the hope that tonight you can eat, and tomorrow your fingers are still attached. Despite the cold, the dangers, and the never-ending hunger, you find moments of warmth. A rare, kind soul slips you a hot potato or a copper coin. The match girls and boys stick together, sharing tips about friendly shopkeepers or which policeman will look the other way if you linger too long. Sometimes, you even manage to sell a box to someone who doesn't really need matches. They just want to see a small, soot-smeared face light up with surprise. At the end of a long, freezing day, you pack up what's left, counting your coins, blowing on your hands, and wishing you could trade every match for a single hour by a real fire. Home, if you can call it that, is a crowded room with too little heat and too many dreams. Still, you sleep with a strange, stubborn hope that tomorrow will be better, maybe a little warmer, maybe a little luckier. You drift off, fingers curled around a single unsold match, imagining what it would be like to light it and have enough warmth to last the night. That's the real magic of being a matchstick seller. You're always cold, but you never quite run out of hope. You roam alleys and cellars, armed with a bag, a stick, and nerves of steel. Your mission: reduce the city's rat population, one bite at a time. The pay is by the tail. Bonus points if you manage not to get the plague. Let's descend into your world, where sunlight is a rumour and every shadow might scurry. It's just after midnight, and the city's quiet is shattered only by the distant clatter of a carriage and the closer, unmistakable scratching of claws. Most Londoners recoil from the sight of a twitching nose and a whip-like tail. Not you. You step boldly into the darkness, boots squelching through filth, every sense attuned for squeaks, rustles, and the telltale gleam of beady little eyes. Your tools are basic but effective: a sturdy stick for thwacking, a burlap sack for collection, and if you're lucky, a terrier with more energy than sense. Some rat catchers train whole squads of dogs, others work solo, relying on sharp reflexes and a willingness to crawl through holes most people wouldn't poke with an umbrella. The city's rats are clever, fat, fast, and suspicious of anything that smells faintly of soap. But you know their habits, their shortcuts, and, most importantly, their weaknesses. Peanut butter, luxury, stale bread and bacon fat, rat gold. Each shift is a gauntlet. The best hunting grounds are the cellars of bakers and butchers, overflowing with food scraps and rodent ambition. You slip inside with a nod to the owner, usually someone who's long since given up on dignity and just wants the rats gone. Down below, the air is thick with dust and the musky tang of fur. You can hear them before you see them. A living tide rustling behind crates, squeezing through cracks, plotting world domination, or at least the destruction of next week's meat pies. Let's talk technique. Patience is essential. You kneel, motionless, waiting for the rats to forget you're there. Then, with a sudden move, you swipe, scoop, and sack. Sometimes it's over in a flash. Other times, it's a full-on rodent chase, complete with crashing barrels and whispered apologies to any startled cats. Your heart pounds as you snatch a tail or corner a particularly wily specimen. A good night means a full bag and no new bites. A bad night means limping home, nursing scratches, and wondering if it's finally time to invest in gloves. The pay is simple and humiliating. A penny per tail, counted at the end of the night like a grim tally of your personal war with the city's most prolific squatters. Some rat catchers supplement their income by selling live rats to sporting clubs. Victorians, being Victorians, sometimes staged brutal matches between dogs and rats for entertainment. If you've got a knack for trapping them alive, you might just score a bonus. Modern pest control experts gripe about having to spray under the sink. You, the Victorian rat catcher, dive face. First into the living embodiment of pestilence. Health and safety regulations, please. The only thing between you and a lifetime of itches is your own stubborn immune system. The threat of plague is always there, lurking in the background, a dark running joke among rat catchers. If you haven't gotten the fever yet, you're either lucky or already a ghost. Let's be honest, the social status is what you'd expect. People hold their noses as you pass, mothers clutch their children, and bakers pay you in bread just to keep you, and your sack, from lingering at their doorstep. But within the secret society of rat catchers, there's a strange camaraderie. You swap stories about the ones that got away, trade tips on the best traps, and share cures for bites that involve everything from garlic to vigorous denial. Still, you take pride in your work. Every rat you catch is one less chewing through the walls, one less spreading disease, one less keeping the city awake at night. And at the end of your shift, bag-heavy and stick-splintered, you dump your haul at the tallyman's feet, collect your wages, and march home, grateful above all that you've survived another night without becoming rat food yourself. Tomorrow, the hunt continues, because in Victorian London, there's always another rat, another alley, and another unlikely hero armed with nothing but a stick, a bag, and an iron will. You pull a cart through the streets, collecting anything that's not nailed down: rags, bones, scrap metal, dead cats. Everything you own smells like mildew and melancholy. Occasionally, a child offers you a broken toy. That's your 401k. Let's step into your mudcake boots for a day. The sun is barely up, and London's alleys are already alive with the low murmur of commerce and the rattle of your trusty cart, half wood, half wishful thinking, and all that stands between you and total ruin. Your workday starts when most of the city is still dreaming, and ends long after the shopkeepers have pulled down their shutters. This isn't a career exactly. It's an ongoing negotiation with fate, filth, and the ever-hopeful idea that today you'll find something just valuable enough to buy a loaf of bread and maybe a new pair of socks. Your competition is everywhere. Other rag and bone men, rival scavengers, and even ambitious children with nothing but a sack and a dream of one day eating dinner. Every street is a battleground. You must be quick and cunning, eyes sharp for the glint of metal in a rubbish heap or the telltale corner of a discarded coat. Rags are the prize, sold to paper mills to be pulped and reborn as yesterday's news. Bones? Off to the glue factories or crushed for fertilizer. Scrap metal, broken pots, even the occasional bottle, every bit counts. If you can lift it, you can sell it, and if you can't sell it, well, you can at least add it to your cart to make yourself look busy. The social status of a scavenger sits somewhere between stray dog and missing poster. People cross the street to avoid the smell, or, if they're feeling generous, toss a bit of junk your way. You become a connoisseur of refuse, a sommelier of the city's secrets. Each find tells a story: a torn dress, fashion emergency; a cracked chamber pot, domestic disaster; a pile of bones, Tuesday. You learn to judge a household's fortunes by its trash, and sometimes, in a rare moment of compassion, you even return a lost item for a reward, though more often, you just get a new stain on your shirt. Your companions are as motley as your haul. There's old Joe, who claims to have found a gold ring once, no one believes him, and young Martha, who's quicker than most adults and twice as ruthless. There's even a one-eyed cat that follows you around, half for the company and half for the bones. Occasionally, a child offers you a toy missing all its limbs or a doll with only one haunted eye. These become the prized possessions on your cart, symbols of dreams that never quite made it to the finish line. Let's compare. Modern recycling involves neat bins, colour-coded trucks, and a vague sense of moral superiority. You, the Victorian scavenger, are the system. If you don't collect it, it just rots. You trudge through rain and sun, past jeering boys and suspicious housewives, pulling your creaking cart from one end of the city to the other. If you're lucky, you end up with a pocketful of coins. If you're not, you end up with a wheelbarrow full of disappointment and a long walk home. Hazards? Plenty. Broken glass cuts your hands, heavy loads strain your back, and every day brings the risk of disease. Occasionally, you stumble on something more sinister, evidence of a crime, a nest of angry rats, or, worst of all, a tax collector with questions. There's a knack for surviving in your line of work. A quick wit, a strong back, and a nose that gave up long ago. Yet there are moments of triumph too, a silver spoon in the gutter, a nearly new coat with only one small tear, a copper pot that polishes up like new. In those moments, you remember why you keep at it. The world may look down on you, but you know the truth. One person's trash is another's survival, and sometimes even hope. At day's end, you drag your bounty home, tired but undefeated. Pockets a little heavier, heart a little lighter. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. Ever the optimist, ever the original recycler, London's unsung hero, rolling through the fog with dreams and broken toys in tow. Too young for real work, too poor to be idle, you shadow an older sweeper, learning the fine art of avoiding angry horses and distracted pedestrians. Every day is a lesson in humility and dodging flying apples. Let's take you there, Victorian London, where being a child means your choices are work, or work slightly more humiliating. Instead of schoolbooks and chalk, your mornings begin with a splintered broom and a stern lecture from your mentor. A veteran sweeper with a limp, a suspiciously large moustache, and a personal vendetta against mud. You're not paid in coins so much as in life lessons and the privilege of not getting trampled. Your uniform? A threadbare cap, 2 big boots you inherited from someone who probably didn't want them back, and a jacket so patched it might actually be holding itself together out of sheer will. You grab your miniature broom and set to work alongside your master, sweeping a section of street that, by some cosmic joke, seems to attract every single horse and cart in London. The apprenticeship is immersive, to say the least. Your boss teaches you the subtle craft of sweeping just enough sludge to keep the wealthy dry, but not so much that you look like you're trying too hard. Victorian street politics are complicated. You quickly learn to read the crowd, who will tip, who will ignore you, and who might just throw something unpleasant your way. Spoiler, it's always apples, and never the nice kind. Rainy days mean overtime. As the mud piles higher, and your odds of staying upright drop with every step, you spend a lot of time dodging irritable cabbies, rushing housemaids, and other apprentices with bigger brooms and sharper elbows. There's a silent competition. Who can clear a crossing fastest? Who gets the most nods from the wealthy? And, most importantly, who can avoid the flying debris when someone inevitably trips over your work in progress? Modern children might complain about homework, but you, the crossing sweeper's apprentice, have an entirely different syllabus. Lesson 1. How to avoid being run over. Lesson 2. Advanced Mud Flinging, Defensive Edition. Lesson 3. When to duck, and when to pretend you didn't see that. There's no final exam, just the ongoing test of survival. Day after damp day, you start to pick up the little tricks. Standing just the right distance from the curb to seem helpful, twirling your broom for sympathy, and flashing a pitiful smile at anyone who looks like they might toss a penny your way. Some days, you actually manage to impress your mentor, who grumbles something vaguely encouraging and lets you keep an extra crust of bread. Social status? Well, let's just say you don't get invited to the nice birthday parties. Other kids stare or cross the street when they see you, afraid the mud on your boots might be contagious. Adults glance down with pity or annoyance, sometimes both at once. But you and your fellow apprentices develop a camaraderie, swapping stories, splitting tips, and inventing games to pass the endless hours. Rules of stickball in the sludge are currently under review. Hazards abound. A distracted horse can mean a broken toe or, worse, a ruined day's wages. Angry shopkeepers might chase you away for making their doorway too clean. The weather is never on your side, and neither are your own shivering hands. Every night, you head home damp, dirty, and a little more resilient than the day before. Yet, for all its hardships, there's a weird sense of pride. You're learning from the best. You're out-earning your older brother, barely, and every successful crossing feels like a tiny victory over the city's relentless grime. One day, you'll graduate to full sweeper status, maybe even claim your own corner, assuming you survive the training and still have all your toes. As the city's lamps flicker to life and your mentor calls it a night, you trudge home, broom in hand and head held high. Another day survived. Another layer of mud under your nails. After all, someone has to teach London's next generation of street cleaners, and for now, that someone is you. You get paid to look sad at other people's funerals. The job description: stand silently, dressed in black, no matter the weather. Your tears are fake, your pay is meagre, and you're the least popular +1 at the wake. Let's set the scene. It's a drizzly, grey Victorian afternoon, because of course it is, and you're standing outside a churchyard, clutching a hat that's older than you are. Your uniform is funereal black from head to toe. right down to your scuffed boots and gloves that have seen more grief than most vicars. The family has hired you not for your sparkling conversation, but for your ability to embody the spirit of general gloom. You're the decorative parsley on the side of the grief platter, except less appetizing. The etiquette is strict. Stand at the head of the procession, chin lowered, eyes respectfully glazed. If you're really good, you can look so tragic that passing strangers pause to mourn a second, just in case. No matter how many funerals you attend, you are always deeply moved, or at least deeply cold and damp. On a good day, you might be mistaken for a distant cousin. On a bad day, you're mistaken for an especially stylish gravestone. The actual work is equal parts theatre and endurance sport. You're expected to stand for hours, never fidget, never speak, never let your gaze wander to the nearest bakery. Children point at you, the undertaker treats you like a piece of rented furniture, and there's always someone's aunt loudly whispering, "Who's that?" as if you're not painfully aware that you don't belong. Your face aches from holding the same mournful expression, and your mind plays endless loops of sad thoughts, lost puppies, broken teacups, the time you dropped your only umbrella in the canal. Let's talk about the pay. You receive a few pennies per funeral, barely enough for a cup of tea and a stale bun, but better than nothing if you're between other career opportunities. Sometimes there's a bonus for getting rained on, or for convincingly dabbing your eyes with a mostly clean handkerchief. Occasionally, a wealthy family might slip you an extra coin for exceptional glumness. You practice your best tragic sigh in the mirror at home, just in case. You'd think standing in the rain pretending to sob would be low on the Victorian social ladder, but funeral mutes are oddly in demand. The Victorians love a good display of mourning, wailing widows, black-plumed horses, and a phalanx of paid mourners to prove that the dearly departed was as beloved as a minor royal. You, the mute, are there to add gravitas, to say nothing, eloquently, to outsad the actual family if possible, and to never ever break character. Of course, hazards abound. The weather is your biggest enemy. Blazing summer heat turns your black suit into a mobile oven, while winter winds whip your coat like a flag of misery. There are wardrobe malfunctions, button pops, collapsing hats, a tragic rip in your only pair of trousers. You suffer in silence, because that's literally the job description. Sometimes the bereaved are generous with their tea and sandwiches after the service, but mostly you drift off hungry, feet aching, and shoulders weighed down with the weight of other people's sorrows. Modern folks might wonder what's so hard about looking sad for an afternoon, but you, the professional mute, know it's more than just frowning for pennies. It's an endurance test of patience, posture, and resisting the urge to sneeze at the wrong moment. There's an art to being both completely invisible and the very picture of grief, never the star, but always in the frame. Still, in the small world of professional mourning, there's a quiet pride. You keep the rituals alive, hold space for families who need a little help showing their sadness, and, occasionally, catch the eye of a sympathetic mourner who slips you a roll or a kind word. When the last bell tolls and the grave is filled, you slip away into the city's grey mist, pockets a little heavier and spirit a little more stoic. And so, another day fades with you, the unsung extra in the theatre of Victorian grief. Tomorrow, rain or shine, the city will need you again, the professional mourner, the mute sentinel, standing silent as history's least cheerful party guest. You scrub, polish and launder for the upper classes, listening to their arguments through paper-thin walls. Sometimes you find treasures in the laundry. Sometimes it's just another mystery stain. Let's begin your day before dawn, when the only creatures stirring are the mice in the pantry and you, the chambermaid, already knee-deep in soapy water. While the family upstairs snoozes in feather beds, you tiptoe through endless hallways with a mop in one hand and a mental checklist in the other. It's your job to make their lives seamless and spotless, an ironic goal considering how often you find yourself wrestling with things that can't be unseen or unwashed. Your uniform is practical. A plain cotton dress, an apron that's never as clean as it should be, and a cap pinned in place more by sweat than style. Your hands are perpetually wrinkled from scrubbing, and your knees creak from all the hours spent crouched on stone floors. Each new shift is a marathon. Beds to make, fires to light, silver to polish, and chamber pots to empty. Yes, those too. You learn to keep a poker face, especially when the gentry forgets just how human they are. The laundry room is your second home, and it's as close to a Victorian spa as you'll ever get. Water boils in giant tubs, steam clouds your view, and your skin takes on the soft glow of someone who's spent the last 4 hours wrestling with mud, grass, stains, and the inexplicable things rich people spill on their cravats. Sometimes, a forgotten coin or a jeweled pin falls out of a pocket, your own miniature treasure hunt. If you're lucky, you find it before the housekeeper does. If you're unlucky, it's just another pair of bloomers with a story you'd rather not know. And let's not forget your real job, guardian of secrets. Those walls may be thick, but the doors are always ajar and the arguments never whispered. You hear everything, the snide remarks about Aunt Millicent's teeth, the ongoing war over who gets the bigger bedroom, and the mysterious thuds in the library at midnight. You become fluent in the subtle art of pretending not to hear. Your ability to keep a straight face is so legendary, even the butler is jealous. Hazards? Oh, plenty. Aside from the obvious threat of mop-induced blisters and accidental encounters with live spiders the size of teacups, you navigate a daily obstacle course of angry cooks, sleepwalking lords, and the constant risk of being blamed for anything that goes missing. If a cufflink disappears, it's your fault. If a sock goes astray, your name is first on the suspect list. You dream of a world where socks simply stay in pairs, but you know deep down that such a place is a fantasy. Probably invented by someone who's never done laundry in their life. Let's compare. Modern folks complain about their washing machines eating socks and a dishwasher that leaves streaks. You, the Victorian chambermaid, are the dishwasher, the vacuum, and the lost and found all in one. You clean the drawing rooms while quietly filing away every family secret, hoping no one ever asks you what you know about the missing necklace or the note tucked inside Lady Agatha's boot. But there are bright spots. Sometimes the lady of the house rewards you with an old dress or a ribbon that still smells faintly of lavender. On rare occasions, you get an extra slice of cake in the kitchen or a warm thank you from a guest who actually remembers your name. Among your fellow maids, you share laughs and whispered stories, forging friendships that help you survive the long hours and endless tasks. At the end of a long, exhausting day, you trudge up to your attic room, slip off your shoes, and sink onto a lumpy mattress. Your hands ache, your back is tired, and you know tomorrow will bring more secrets, more stains, and more stories to tuck away in your mind. But there's a certain pride in being the invisible force that keeps the household running, a silent witness to history, and perhaps the only person who ever really knows where all the socks go. You drift off, comforted by the knowledge that, at least for tonight, you've managed to keep both the secrets and the silverware safe, until morning, when the whole grand circus starts again. 12 hours a day, hunched over a candle, you stitch endless seams for a few pence. Your fingers bleed, your back aches, and your eyesight is a fading memory. Coffee break? Not invented yet. Let's thread the needle on your Victorian workday. You rise before the sun, fumbling for your thread, and thimble with hands already raw from yesterday's quota. Breakfast is a piece of stale bread, and the faint hope you'll have enough time to chew it. You shuffle to your post in a crowded room above a shop, crammed elbow to elbow with other women and girls, all of you bent like wilted stalks over the same relentless task. Sew, not repeat. The noise is a low, ceaseless hum, whispered gossip, the snap of thread, the stifled cough of a fellow seamstress inhaling fabric dust. Windows are few and far between, and mostly closed to keep out the chill, or the boss's paranoia that someone might sneak a scrap of cloth for themselves. Your only natural light comes from the grimy pane above your head. The rest of your day is lit by flickering candles and hope. One burns faster than the other. Your tools are simple and unforgiving. A dull needle, a stubby pair of scissors, a spool of thread that's always running low. The work itself is endless. Hemming dresses, sewing buttons, stitching seams so tight that your fingertips ache. It's a race against time and quotas, with the supervisor always lurking, ready to dock your pay for the smallest mistake. Drop a stitch, and you start over. Drop your focus, and you might lose your place, your pay, or if you're really unlucky, a fingertip. There's no time to stretch, let alone stand. You shift on a hard wooden stool, feeling the knots in your back multiply as the hours crawl by. Your legs go numb, your neck stiffens, and your eyes water until the thread blurs. Still, you press on. Every finished shirt or petticoat is another halfpenny, another crumb of bread, another day not spent begging on the streets. The work is monotonous, but at least it's work. Lunch is short and silent. A quick bite of something cold, eaten with one hand while the other still guides the needle. Conversation is limited, mostly whispered warnings about the boss or dark jokes about what it would take to escape. The bravest among you dream out loud of starting your own dress shop, maybe one with windows, a door that locks, and, dare you imagine, a tea kettle. The hazards of the job are as constant as the hours. Fabric dust fills your lungs and throat. Pins and needles prick your skin, sometimes deep enough to draw blood. By afternoon, your lap is speckled with tiny red stains, and your only comfort is that everyone else looks the same. The risk of fire is real. One toppled candle, and the whole sweatshop could go up in flames, taking your livelihood and maybe your only dress with it. Modern complaints about open-plan offices and blue light headaches sound almost luxurious from your wooden perch. No one here is worried about screen time or ergonomic keyboards. Your closest brush with ergonomics is shifting from one sore hip to the other, dreaming of the day your hands might not tremble at night. Still, there's a quiet camaraderie among the seamstresses. You trade scraps for mending, pass along patterns for a better fit, and occasionally, when the boss isn't looking, you even manage a tired laugh. Every so often, you take pride in a perfectly finished seam, a dress that will be paraded through London by someone who'll never know your name or your blisters. As the candle gutters and the supervisor calls time, you set your work aside, rub your eyes, and shuffle home to a cramped room and another night of fitful sleep. Your hands ache, your back throbs, but for today, you survived. Tomorrow will bring more stitches, more stories, and maybe, just maybe, the faint hope of a better life. One not measured in inches of thread, but in dreams finally made real. Someone has to move all that lovely, fragrant mud from the city's construction sites. That someone is you. Rainy days mean overtime. And the mud, somehow, gets everywhere. Inside your boots, your teeth, your dreams. Let's take you into the saddle, perched atop a rickety wooden cart drawn by the world's most skeptical horse. Dawn is barely breaking, but your boots are already thick with London's favourite export, pure, unfiltered, extra chunky mud. Your first task? Load up the cart with the sticky spoils of every new street, cellar, and excavation the city throws at you. Construction may be booming, but someone has to make sure the walkways don't turn into instant bogs, and that someone is you, part driver, part shovel wielder, all grime. Your uniform is less outfit and more protective layering. Wool trousers stiff with old muck, a battered coat, and a scarf you suspect was white at some point. You wrap your feet in rags before squeezing them into boots that never quite dry. Gloves are for the rich. You've developed a set of calluses so thick you could probably shovel hot coals and barely notice. Driving the cart is an exercise in patience and balance. The roads are a rutted obstacle course, splattered with more mud than seems physically possible. Every pothole is a potential disaster. One wrong bump and your precious cargo tries to rejoin the street, usually by way of your lap. Steering a stubborn horse through the muck is a job for a philosopher, or at least someone who's made peace with their laundry situation. You try coaxing, pleading, and the occasional gentle threat, all while avoiding the fancy carriages whose owners glare as if you personally invented filth. You're not just moving mud, you're moving history. Victorian London is always under construction. Sewers dug up, pipes laid down, foundations shifted, roads improved. Red torn apart for the third time this year. Every load tells a story. A muddy mix of clay, bricks, mystery bones, and the occasional artifact from some long-lost Roman legion. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll find a coin or a scrap of metal worth selling on the side. Most days, your treasures are limited to the satisfaction of not losing a boot in the street. Hazards abound. There's the ever-present threat of slipping off the cart, getting splashed head to toe by a passing wagon, or simply sinking so deep into the sludge that rescue involves more pulling than dignity allows. Other drivers are your allies and your rivals, fighting for the flattest routes and the driest spots to unload. You become a connoisseur of mud, knowing by smell, colour, and how much it tries to eat your wheels, whether it's a good day or a don't bother washing your face kind of day. Let's compare. Modern city workers might complain about potholes or muddy boots, but you, the mudcart driver, are mud's main mode of transport. You dream of pavement, of rubber boots, of a world where mud is just a word. Instead, you spend your hours shoveling, hauling, and delivering what the city would rather forget. Sometimes to be dumped in an empty lot, sometimes right back onto another construction site, in the eternal circle of Victorian progress. Social status is what you'd expect. People give you a wide berth. Shopkeepers scowl if you park nearby. Children follow the cart, drawn by the promise of splashing and the hope you'll drop something interesting. You become used to the stares, the turned-up noses, and the resigned looks from housewives with freshly scrubbed stoops. Still, you take a strange pride in your work. Someone has to keep the city moving, to make sure the streets don't disappear under a tidal wave of ooze. You learn to laugh at the mess, at the sheer inevitability of mud in places it has no right to be. By the end of the day, you're mud-streaked, exhausted, and somehow lighter, because if you can face London's endless mudslide and live to tell the tale, you can face just about anything. You unhitch your horse, give it an extra pat, and head home, boots squelching, ready to do it all again tomorrow. After all, the city isn't getting any cleaner. But for one glorious night at least, you can rest, mud and all, knowing you're London's most unsung and certainly most splattered hero. Before alarms, people paid you to tap on their windows with a stick to wake them for work. You rise before dawn, risk getting things thrown at you, and your only reward is knowing you're slightly less despised than the rooster. Let's set the scene. It's pitch black and foggy outside, the city's gas lamps barely fighting back the gloom. While most Londoners are still snoring, you're up and dressed in 3 layers of wool, scarf wound tight, and boots laced against the chill. Your main tool is a long stick, sometimes bamboo, sometimes a fishing rod, sometimes whatever you found lying around last week. For the fancier houses or higher floors, you might wield a pea shooter, launching dried peas at pains with the accuracy of a grumpy sniper. Your first clients are factory workers and shopkeepers, people whose livelihoods depend on getting up before the sun, and who, by Victorian standards, are wealthy enough to pay a few pence for the privilege of being pestered at 4 a.m. With your trusty stick, you start down your list, rapping on glass, gently at first, then with more insistence as the minutes tick by and no face appears. You know everyone's schedule by heart. Mrs. Barnaby on the 3rd floor? She needs 2 knocks and a shouted, "Wake up, love." The blacksmith's apprentice? 10 rapid raps and a threat about missing his job. The job is more complex than it looks. Each window is a different challenge. Some have ledges full of flower pots. Watch your aim. Some are behind iron bars, requires creative poking, and a few belong to night owls who pay you only to ignore you and sleep in anyway. The work takes finesse, a soft touch for the grumpy grandmothers, a booming knock for the heavy sleepers, and the occasional ducking maneuver for anyone who reacts to your wake-up call by hurling a shoe, a boot, Or, once, an entire chamber pot. You don't just provide a service, you deliver the city's wake-up call. Without you, the whole street would miss their shifts. The factory would stand idle, and society itself might collapse. Or so you like to imagine as you tap on yet another frosty window. The modern alarm clock may beep and ring, but it never has to dodge a rotten tomato. You, meanwhile, are a target for every grumpy riser's bad mood, and sometimes, if you're lucky, a grateful wave or a copper coin tossed down from above. Hazards? There are plenty. The weather never cooperates. Rain soaks you, snow numbs your fingers, and fog makes every shadow a potential dog lying in wait. You have to be careful on icy cobbles, and more than one knocker-up has ended up sprawled in the gutter, wondering if this is what job satisfaction is supposed to feel like. There's also the constant danger of mistiming your route and waking the wrong person, earning a day's worth of curses or a black mark on your reputation. Let's compare. Modern office workers might have to contend with snooze buttons, but you, the Victorian knocker-up, are the snooze button. There's no option to sleep in, not unless you feel like facing an angry mob of late risers. Your schedule is everyone else's schedule, and you live for the small victories, a sleepy smile, a thumbs up, or the rare day when no one throws anything at you at all. Social status? It's complicated. The very people who rely on you also look down on you. After all, you're the human equivalent of an early morning nuisance. But there's camaraderie among knocker-ups. You exchange tips on the best sticks, swap stories about the oddest things thrown your way, and sometimes pool your coins for a cup of tea at the end of your route. By sunrise, your work is mostly done. You've shaken the city awake, one window at a time. You head home as the streets come alive, proud of your essential, if slightly ridiculous role. You're the unsung hero of punctuality. The only person up before the baker, the grocer, and even the city's infamous rats. So, if you ever curse your alarm for dragging you out of bed, spare a thought for the knocker-up, armed only with a stick, a pea-shooter, and a stubborn sense of duty. Tomorrow, you'll be up before the dawn again, rapping at the panes, a living, breathing, and occasionally battered reminder that someone, somewhere, is always making sure the city wakes up. With a rusty pair of pliers and a pocketful of optimism, you roam markets yanking teeth for the desperate. Anesthesia? Just bite down on this leather strap and think of England. Let's step into your creaky, overshined boots. You're not so much a dentist as you are a travelling dental cowboy, setting up shop on a street corner or outside the market, your tools rolled up in a stained cloth. Your clinic is whatever empty barrel or rickety stool you can find, and your waiting room is a growing crowd of nervous patients clutching at swollen cheeks, quietly praying for a miracle, or at least a gentle touch. Your kit is minimal and terrifying. One pair of pliers with a questionable history, a ragged strap of leather for the patient to bite down on, a handful of dirty cloths, and maybe, if you're feeling fancy, a slug of gin to numb the pain, or at least to distract from it. Sterilization is a word that hasn't made it across the channel yet. You clean your tools with the corner of your sleeve, a splash of water from a questionable source, or, on a particularly hygienic day, a quick pass through a candle flame. Your best friend is speed, your enemy is hesitation. The job is part performance, part brute force, and all about nerves, yours and theirs. You bark your prices, try to look reassuring, and beckon the first customer to take a seat. Usually they're desperate, decayed molars, infected gums, and a pain that's left them sleepless for days. They ask if it will hurt. You offer them the strap and your most comforting lie. Only a pinch. There are no forms, no insurance, just a public spectacle and a whole lot of trust in your grip strength. The work is not for the squeamish. The sounds alone, the crack of enamel, the patient's groan, the squelch as another tooth is freed from its long-standing post, could make a butcher queasy. You keep your focus, working quickly, tossing each extracted trophy into a tin cup with a clink that's oddly satisfying. Sometimes, a patient faints mid-extraction, which is both a relief and a challenge. The only anesthesia is shock, and you work even faster while their brain is distracted by the drama. Let's compare. Modern dentists have reclining chairs, gentle music, a menu of painkillers, and a fleet of tiny mirrors. You, the Victorian tooth drawer, work in public, with an audience that alternates between horrified fascination and gleeful anticipation of the next spectacle. If you're successful, you're celebrated as a minor miracle worker. If you fail, or if your patient runs screaming, you're just another street character to avoid. The pay is unpredictable. Some customers press a shilling into your hand, grateful to be free of agony. Others slip away before paying, mumbling excuses with a mouthful of cotton. On good days, you might make enough for a hot meal and a stiff drink. On bad days, you leave with aching hands, a few bruises from flailing patients, and the hope that tomorrow's market will bring in better business, or at least fewer teeth that crumble at the first tug. Hazards? More than you can count. Infections are common, both for you and your clients. The risk of a patient biting your fingers is real, especially if the gin runs out. And then there's the social stigma. Children cross the street when they see you coming. Shopkeepers keep a wary eye on your pliers. Even your friends hesitate to smile too widely, lest you get ideas. Yet, for all the grime and gore, there's a strange pride in your work. Every yanked tooth is a job well done, a small service in a world where pain relief is rare and modern dentistry is a distant fantasy. You pack up your tools as the sun sets, fingers sticky, pockets jangling with coins, and teeth, and maybe a new appreciation for the quiet dignity of a job nobody else wants to do. Tomorrow, you'll be back, pliers at the ready, serving the desperate with courage, questionable hygiene, and the time-honored tradition of one good pull. And if you ever doubt your place in the world, just remember, someone has to do it. And tonight, that someone is you. You crawl into the sewers, searching for coins, jewelry, or anything valuable that people drop down the drain. It's dark, it's dangerous, and it's not just the rats that want you gone. Let's set the scene. It's well past midnight. The city above is silent, and you, armed with nothing but a battered lantern, a long pole, and the world's most battered pair of boots, are about to vanish beneath the streets. Down here, the echoing tunnels twist beneath London like the world's worst treasure map, promising untold riches and untold filth in equal measure. The scent is indescribable, a pungent bouquet of rot, rainwater, and every secret the city would rather flush away. There's no turning back, not if you want to eat tomorrow. You slide through an iron grate, hunched low, balancing on slippery stones. Your kit is simple: the aforementioned lantern, a sack slung over your back, a crowbar for prying up stuck grates, and a hook for fishing through the murky waters. Your only armor is a thick coat, more holes than fabric, and the hope that today you won't find anything with more teeth than you. Toshing is a game of chance, luck, and nerves of steel. The best finds go to those willing to go deepest, and those who know how to get out fast when things go sideways. It's not just rats down here, though there are plenty, big, bold, and territorial. They eye you as you pass, daring you to try your luck in their patch. Sometimes you see a flash of another Toshers lantern in the distance, and you both pretend not to notice each other. There's an unspoken code: share the tunnels, but never your best spots. Above ground, your competitors. Down here, everyone is just trying to survive. Your eyes adjust quickly. In the gloom, every glimmer of metal sets your heart racing. A coin wedged between bricks, a lost brooch, even the occasional silver spoon from a clumsy butler's misadventure. You dig, scrape, and occasionally submerge your arm in water that defies all laws of nature and decency. When you strike something solid, you let out a triumphant laugh, stifled quickly, lest you attract attention from creatures of either the human or rodent variety. Hazards are everywhere. The water level can rise without warning, especially when it rains up above. What's a light shower for Londoners can mean a flash flood below. You learn to listen for the change in the water's song, the distant rumble that means it's time to scramble for the nearest ladder and hope you don't slip. There are other dangers too. Gas pockets that can snuff out your lantern and your consciousness. Unstable brickwork and the constant threat of catching something that no tonic or poultice will cure. Let's compare. Modern-day treasure hunters use metal detectors on beaches and get sunburned. You, the Victorian Tosher, get trench foot, tetanus, and stories nobody will ever believe. There's no audience for your victories, except maybe a jealous rat. Your greatest find might be a handful of coins, enough for bread and a pint, or, on a legendary day, a gold ring, lost and forgotten by someone who never dreamed it would end up here. Social status? Well, you don't exactly put Tosher on your resume. People wrinkle their noses and cross the street when you emerge, caked in mystery sludge. But within your own circle, you're respected, a gritty explorer, a survivor of the city's underworld in every sense. You trade stories, and occasionally a bottle of something strong to take the edge off your day's work. But there's a strange sort of pride, too. London wouldn't run without the Toshers, the unseen hands cleaning up what others leave behind. Each trip into the tunnels is an act of faith, a belief that luck, skill, or sheer stubbornness will see you through. And sometimes, just sometimes, it does. When the sun rises, you climb back to the surface, blinking like a mole, pockets jangling with your hard-won haul. You breathe deep, grateful for fresh air. Well, relatively fresh. You know you'll be back down there soon, but for now, you're the master of the sewers, a Tosher, treasure hunter, and unsung hero of London's darkest corners. When medical schools need cadavers, you and your shovel answer the call. It's graveyard shifts, literally, dodging police, angry mobs, and ghosts, probably. The pay's good, but the sleep is haunted. Let's set the scene. It's well past midnight in Victorian London. The fog is thick, the moon is hiding, and you're skulking behind gravestones with a lantern, a shovel, and the shakiest of moral compasses. Forget rest in peace. Your job is to make sure peace is just a temporary arrangement. Medical students and surgeons pay handsomely for fresh subjects, and you, the Resurrectionist, are their unlikely supplier. The tools of your trade are simple but telling. A well-oiled shovel, a crowbar, and nerves made of whatever they use to build haunted houses. You creep through the cemetery, boots muffled by damp grass, pausing at every creak or hoot from the local owl. You're not alone. Sometimes you work with a partner, sometimes with a whole crew, splitting the loot and the guilt by moonlight. You avoid the oldest graves. It's the fresh ones that fetch the best price. Your job is part grave robber, part logistics specialist, and all about staying one step ahead of the law, and, occasionally, angry relatives with very big sticks. The actual work is sweaty, frantic, and never as glamorous as penny dreadfuls make it sound. Digging in the dark is hard labor, soil is heavy, and you're always fighting the clock. Too slow, and you'll be interrupted by the night watchman, the police, or an unlucky mourner prone to midnight strolls. Too fast, and you risk breaking the coffin, or worse, the merchandise. There's an art to it. Dig quietly, move quickly, and hope your lantern doesn't give you away. When you finally reach the box, you pry it open, working by the faint glow of candlelight and a chorus of your own nerves. Hauling a body out of the earth isn't just grim, it's dangerous. Medical schools want fresh specimens, and freshness, as you quickly learn, is a relative term. The risk of disease is ever present, and every scratch from a broken nail or splintered wood becomes a ticking time bomb. Still, you do what you must, wrapping the body in a sheet and lugging it back through the shadows to your waiting cart. Payment, at least, is swift and substantial, at least compared to shoveling coal or collecting night soil. Doctors and students pay by the body. No questions asked. And you keep your own questions to yourself. Some nights you make enough to eat well for a week. Other times, the whole job is a bust, and you slink home empty-handed, dirtier, and more paranoid than when you started. Let's compare. Modern medical students dissect plastic models and check out textbooks from a library. You, the Victorian Resurrectionist, supply the real deal and risk prison, violence, or worse for your trouble. The moral line is not just blurred, it's trampled by your muddy boots. Hazards are many. There's the police, who patrol graveyards looking for suspicious activity and rarely stop to ask questions. There are the so-called watchers, hired by families to stand vigil over fresh graves, eager for a chance to make an example out of anyone caught digging. Then there's the public, superstitious, furious, and never more than one rumour away from a torch and pitchfork mob. And of course there are the ghosts. Maybe you don't believe, but some nights the wind sounds suspiciously like a warning, and every owl's cry is a reminder that the dead might not stay quiet. Social status? Let's just say you don't bring up your night job at dinner. To most people, resurrectionists are the lowest of the low. Grave robbers, ghouls, men, and sometimes women, with one foot in the world of the living and one in the world of the damned. But among your own kind, you're respected for your courage, your discretion, and your ability to outrun anyone carrying a lantern. At the end of the shift, you trudge home as the sun rises, pockets heavy, conscience even heavier. You close your eyes and try not to dream of shovels and shadows, knowing that, soon enough, another medical school will call, another grave will be filled, and you'll be needed again. Because in Victorian England, the only thing scarier than a ghost story is how far people will go for science and for a handful of coins. You sweep a private crossing for a single wealthy patron, waiting for them to leave their house so you can clear a path. The boredom is only broken by humiliation, and you get paid in small coins and big sneers. Let's step into your shoes, polished at first, but soon caked in London's finest mud. Your workplace is the patch of cobblestone directly outside a townhouse with windows so clean they make you nervous just standing near them. Your main tool is a broom, well used, slightly less dignified than a mop, and a bucket for the worst of the street surprises. Forget the hustle and camaraderie of the public crossing sweepers. This is a solo gig, dedicated entirely to one family, their guests, and anyone else who fancies a cleaner step than their neighbours. Your day begins before the households. You take up your position early, sweeping away the night's offerings, manure, mud, and mysterious city debris. The reward? The occasional curt nod from the butler, and a slice of dry bread if you're lucky. You wait, ready for action, but mostly it's a waiting game. Endless hours standing guard while the world hurries by, pretending not to notice the help standing at attention. Every now and then, you hear the creak of the great front door, signalling your moment in the spotlight. Out steps your patron, immaculate from boots to bonnet, escorted by a plume of perfume and an entourage who wouldn't last 10 minutes in your boots. You leap into action, sweeping a path with the urgent grace of someone whose entire week's wages hinge on not splashing a single speck of mud onto a silk hem. Sometimes the crossing is clear already. Doesn't matter. You sweep anyway, bowing your head, avoiding eye contact, and offering a silent prayer that no one's dog has left a surprise directly in your patron's path. The humiliation is relentless. You are the living embodiment of seen but not heard, a fixture to be glanced at, commented on, and, at best, ignored. The household's children giggle behind lace curtains. The local gossips speculate about what you did to deserve such a fate. Visiting relatives step gingerly around you, dropping coins as if you're a wishing well, though always making sure not to actually look you in the eye. The family pets treat you like part of the scenery, occasionally sniffing at your boots in case you're hiding snacks. Let's compare. Most people today complain about micromanaging bosses. You, the high-class sweeper, work for a family where even the maid outranks you. Your schedule is their schedule. If your patron wants to take a stroll at midnight, you're on call. If there's a surprise tea party, you'd better be there, broom in hand, ready to clear a perfectly clean crossing with the enthusiasm of a man opening the stock exchange. Your moments of excitement are rare, and rarely positive. A stray carriage splashes dirty water across the drive, and you're blamed for not predicting the weather. A fashionable guest loses a glove in the muck, and it's your job to retrieve it, without getting said glove any dirtier, naturally. And should you ever dare be late or, heaven forbid, miss a spot, expect a day's worth of icy glares and whispered remarks. Hazards? The biggest is boredom, followed closely by the risk of developing a hunched back from all the bowing and sweeping. Rain turns your patch into a treacherous slip and slide, while summer bakes the cobblestones until the soles of your boots stick. Sometimes, a neighbour's servant will toss their sweepings into your territory, forcing you into a polite but tense broom-based standoff. You perfect the art of silent resentment. And yet, despite the indignities, there's a strange sort of pride. Your job is pointless only if you forget who you're doing it for. Yourself, your family, that extra coin at the end of the week. The work might be humiliating, but it's honest, and someone has to do it. You become a master of the quick sweep, the silent nod, the humble retreat. At day's end, you count your coins, small but hard-earned. You walk away as the street lamps flicker on, boots heavier but spirit stubborn. Tomorrow, you'll be back, broom at the ready, prepared for another round of high-class humiliation. After all, if you can face down the sneers of the rich and keep your patch spotless, there's not much the city can throw at you that you can't handle. Armed with a basket of wilted greens, you haunt the market stalls, begging people to buy your sorry produce. Rain or shine, you shout your lungs out. No one wants Cress, especially not from you. Let's step into your hole-riddled shoes. It's barely dawn in Victorian London, and you're already up, hunched over a battered basket that holds your entire fortune, 2 fistfuls of limp Cress, possibly fresher yesterday, possibly never fresh at all. Your job is simple, at least in theory. Sell enough of these miserable green sprigs to afford a crust of bread, or, if you're lucky, a bit of cheese. But reality is another matter entirely. You squeeze into the jostling mass of the market, your voice hoarse before you even reach your corner. Your competition is everywhere. Sellers of apples, pies, and even yesterday's fish look down their noses at you. Cress isn't glamorous. No one has ever written poetry about it. It's a garnish, a last resort, and the unfortunate punchline of the vegetable world. As you shout fresh Cress penny a bunch, people glance, wrinkle their noses, and move along, eager to spend their hard-earned coins on something, anything, else. You develop thick skin and louder lungs, perfecting a cry that can cut through the chaos. Lovely Cress, good for your blood, they say. You repeat it enough times that you almost start to believe it. The market itself is a parade of sensory misery. Rain turns your stall into a muddy puddle, soaking your thin coat and making your Cress look even sadder. Sun bakes your greens until they're fit only for compost. Wind threatens to scatter your wares, and on a particularly unlucky day, an errant dog might help itself to your best bunch. If you had a penny for every time someone sneered at your basket, you'd be a customer, not a vendor. You do what you can to boost business. Sometimes you fluff up the Cress, arrange it in artistic patterns, or drop a little water to fake freshness. Other times you try to charm potential buyers with tales of Cress's magical health properties. Good for the complexion, you claim. Builds strong bones. Keeps away the doctor. You know it's mostly wishful thinking. But in a city where people will try anything once, sometimes a well-timed fib is your only sales strategy. Let's compare. Modern supermarket shoppers might sigh when the arugula looks limp. But you, the Victorian Cress seller, would have sold a kidney for a produce section and a glass door. There's no refrigeration, no clever marketing, and certainly no organic premium. It's you, your basket, and the uncaring tide of humanity. You stand in the cold, the heat, and the general indifference, desperately hoping a cook with a taste for adventure, or perhaps just poor eyesight, will stop and take pity. Hazards, too many to count. There's the constant threat of your basket being kicked over in the crowd, the market inspector fining you for blocking the walk, or a rival vendor starting a shouting match that drowns out your desperate sales pitch. And then there's the humiliation, the whispers, the laughter, the occasional coin tossed not for your wares but for your persistence. Your social status is somewhere below the street cats, who at least have the sense to move on when people shoo them away. But in the midst of the drudgery, there are moments that keep you going. A kind-hearted soul might buy a bunch out of sympathy, or a cook might remember a childhood meal that featured a sad heap of cress on the side. Sometimes, when the day is especially bleak, a fellow vendor slips you a leftover heel of bread, or you trade a handful of greens for a smile and a story. At the end of the day, you count your coins, sometimes enough, more often not, and trudge home, basket empty but head held high. Tomorrow, you'll be back, cress in hand, voice ready, hoping for better luck. Because if anyone knows the value of perseverance, it's the merchant of misery, the unsung, green-thumbed survivor of London's endless market. Your muscles are your resume. You unload coal from ships, tossing sacks twice your weight. Your hands are black, your lungs are blacker, and your prospects are about as bright as a coal cellar. Let's start before dawn, when the Thames is still cloaked in fog, and the only thing colder than the water is the wind whipping off it. You're up with the river rats and the stevedores, heading down to the docks where the ships huddle, creaking and groaning under the weight of their precious sooty cargo. There's no time for a warm breakfast or a gentle stretch. Your shift begins as soon as the foreman starts barking, and you're already late. The coal whipper's job is simple in theory, brutal in practice. Unload mountains of coal, sack by sack, hour after hour. The pace is relentless. With a thick rope slung over your shoulder, you help hoist enormous sacks from the hold, guide them across a plank that always seems too narrow, and dump them onto the waiting carts. Sometimes, if the river's low, you work waist-deep in freezing, oily water, straining to keep your footing as the city's entire energy supply slides over your back and into your boots. Your uniform is whatever survived yesterday, usually a shirt stiff with old sweat, trousers dusted with soot, and boots patched with hope and string. Gloves are a luxury, and by noon, your hands are cracked and raw, your nails so blackened they look like you borrowed them from a chimney sweep. Every muscle in your body aches. Your back complains in languages you don't even speak. The air around you is thick with coal dust, a fog within the fog, coating your tongue, lining your nostrils, and settling in your lungs like unwelcome wallpaper. You cough, you spit, you curse, and then you get back to work. There's camaraderie on the dock, but it's forged in hardship. Jokes told over backs bent double, songs shouted into the wind just to keep spirits up. A good laugh is the only thing that doesn't cost you a piece of your health. Let's compare. Modern fitness influencers boast about deadlifts and HIIT workouts. You, the Victorian coal whipper, are the original gym rat, except the weights are heavier, the sets never end, and the only thing you're sculpting is a hernia. Your personal trainer is a foreman with a voice like thunder and the motivational style of a prison guard. Rest periods? Only when the cart is full or the ropes snap. Hazards? Let's count them. There's the ever-present risk of slipping and landing under a sack that weighs more than you do. There's the chance of a rope breaking and sending coal raining down like the world's worst hailstorm. You watch out for sharp nails in the sacks, rusty nails in the planks, and rats who see your lunch as a community buffet. Some whippers drown, some get crushed, but most just cough their way home each night and count themselves lucky to do it again tomorrow. The pay is low, the hours long, and nobody's writing sonnets about your work ethic. Your social status is what you'd expect. When you pass in the street, people wrinkle their noses and edge away, not sure if it's the smell or the reputation. Still, you have your pride. There's no job more honest, no muscle more earned. You can lift twice your weight, outlast half the dockyard, and survive on bread, tea, and sheer stubbornness. But amid all the struggle, there are fleeting moments that almost make it worth it. The way the sunrise hits the river when you pause for a breath, the warmth of a flask of tea shared among friends, the rare thanks from a coal merchant who knows you saved his delivery from toppling into the Thames. Sometimes you even feel strong, unstoppable, like you could shoulder the whole city if someone just asked nicely. At the end of the shift, you're more shadow than man, trudging home with coal dust in every crease. You scrub yourself raw, collapse onto your cot, and hope tomorrow you'll wake up with enough strength to do it all again. After all, Victorian England needs its coal. And you, the human engine, are the muscle behind the machine. You sift through rubbish heaps, pulling out bones to sell to glue makers. Every day is an archaeological dig. If archaeologists only discovered sadness. Let's step into your battered boots, where the adventure of the day begins not with excitement, but with the ripe aroma of the city's refuse mounds. It's barely sunrise, and while others might be enjoying the smell of baking bread or a morning cup of tea, you're knee-deep in history's leftovers, eyes scanning every heap for a flash of white among the blackened scraps. Bone grubbing isn't so much a calling as it is a last resort, a career for those with nowhere else to go, nothing left to lose, and an oddly specific skill set in distinguishing between femur, tibia, and no, that's definitely just a very determined carrot. Your kit is minimal, a sack slung over your shoulder, a battered stick for poking and prodding, and a scarf wrapped around your mouth, not for fashion, but for self-preservation against the worst of the city's smells. Every heap is a challenge. The city's refuse collectors empty bins and barrels into the tips, and you're there within minutes, jockeying for the best spot with a ragtag band of fellow bone grubbers, all armed with sticks and sharp eyes. The work is unending and rarely rewarding. You pick your way through piles of broken crockery, rotting vegetables, the odd rat skeleton, and all manner of Victorian discards. Every so often, your stick hits something solid. With a practiced flick, you reveal your prize, a sheep's jawbone, a chicken's femur, perhaps even a chunk of cow skull if it's been a good week for the local butchers. These treasures go straight into your sack, their future destined for the boiling vats of the city's glue and gelatin factories. Competition is fierce. Old hands jostle the new kids out of the choicest heaps. And there's an unspoken rule that if you find a truly impressive specimen, a horse bone, say, or the skull of a particularly unlucky dinner, it's worth bragging about at the local tavern. Children sometimes join the fray, sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued, learning early that in the world of bone grubbing, only the fastest and least squeamish survive. Let's compare. Modern folks get excited about recycling. Clean bins, colour-coded bags, the faint glow of virtue. You, the Victorian bone grubber, are recycling in its most visceral form, returning London's leftovers to the industrial maw. Your workplace isn't sanitised or organised. Instead, it's a never-ending patchwork of mud, refuse, and disappointment, punctuated by the occasional squawk of a crow who thinks you're after its breakfast. Hazards? Too many to count. Broken glass hides beneath the muck, ready to slice your hands. Rats and dogs are constant rivals for the best finds, and the ever-present stink is enough to make your eyes water even on the coldest morning. Disease lurks in every cut and scrape, and the glue factories themselves are hardly paragons of safety. Social status? You're below the Mudlarks, above only the pure finders, and universally regarded as a sign that things could always, somehow, get worse. But there are moments of small victory, finding a whole skeleton, uncovering an especially large cow femur, or the rare discovery of a bone so odd it gets you a free pint at the pub after everyone has finished staring at it. Some days, you stumble upon lost coins or trinkets, accidental bonuses that feel like treasure. And despite it all, there's a strange camaraderie among bone grubbers, a shared sense that yes, your job is miserable, but at least you're not doing it alone. At the end of a long, filthy day, you trudge to the glue merchants, sack slung low, hands raw, and hope the weight is enough to earn you supper. You dream of a day when you won't have to know the exact weight of a pig's jawbone by feel alone. Until then, you keep poking, keep picking, and keep hoping the next heap will yield just enough to keep you going. Because in Victorian England, even the bones have value, and so do the bone grubbers who brave the city's muck to find them. Your patch is outside Buckingham Palace. Your job is unchanged, but the humiliation is heightened by being ignored by everyone important. You dream of getting knighted for your service, but you'd settle for a dry pair of socks. Let's set the scene. It's early morning, the city is waking up, and you're already stationed at your post, broom in hand, eyes stinging from the dawn chill. The palace looms behind you, windows sparkling, guards parading, flags flapping, tourists gawk, dignitaries sweep by in fancy carriages, and not a single one spares you a glance. This is the most prestigious patch of cobblestone in London, at least in theory. In practice, it's just as muddy, messy, and manure-strewn as anywhere else in the city, only with more gold leaf and ceremonial horse droppings. Your uniform is exactly the same as every other crossing sweeper. Patched trousers, coat shiny with last week's rain, hat pulled low against the drizzle. The only thing setting you apart is your address. If you squint at the street sign through the mist and the smell of horse, you might even feel important for a moment. But before you can finish the thought, a passing noblewoman's carriage splashes cold water up your leg, reminding you that status is relative and your own is very, very low. The work is mind-numbingly repetitive. You sweep, you step back, you sweep again. Crowds gather to watch the changing of the guard, boots and parasols marching straight through your freshly cleared path. It's your job to make sure no one's shoes, or hems, or hopes get ruined before they step inside the palace gates. Sometimes you manage a narrow escape, a deft flick of the broom just before a duchess descends, a quick scrape of the curb as a royal footman hovers nearby, glancing at you as though you're an unusually chatty squirrel. Humiliation is a daily special. You stand just out of frame in every royal portrait, present for every grand procession, never more than a shadow in someone else's celebration. You dream that maybe, just once, the Queen herself will pause, look down and offer a word of thanks, or at the very least, a nod. Instead, you get splashed, stepped over, and occasionally shooed away by a palace guard who clearly thinks royal crossing sweeper is a punchline. Let's compare. Most people grumble about being invisible at work, ignored in meetings, forgotten on birthday cards. You, the palace sweeper, have invisibility down to an art form. Nobles literally step around you as if you're a particularly stubborn shrub. Even the palace dogs give you a cursory sniff, then move on to more interesting smells. But amid all the indignity, there are small, stubborn joys. Sometimes a lost tourist drops a penny in your hat, mistaking you for a charming bit of local colour. Sometimes you share a joke with another sweeper, or a palace guard who secretly envies your freedom to stand in the rain rather than at attention. You become an expert in predicting parade routes and deciphering the moods of passing horses, a useful skill given the number of times you've narrowly avoided a royal gift to the pavement. Hazards? The biggest is boredom. You know every crack in your stretch of street, every loose cobblestone, every puddle that refuses to drain. Your hands grow rough from the constant scraping. Your boots never fully dry. And your dreams of recognition fade a little each time a visitor snaps a photo and never includes you in the frame. Still, you hold out hope. Maybe one day a duchess will remember to say thank you. Or the Queen will hand out medals for outstanding service in the field of not getting mud on the nobility. Until then, you take pride in your unseen victories, the path swept just in time, the accidental smile from a child passing by, the knowledge that, for a fleeting moment, you kept the royal world turning, or at least a little cleaner. At the end of the day, you trudge away from the palace, socks as wet as your sense of dignity, but with a stubborn resilience that only a true royal crossing sweeper can muster. After all, Buckingham Palace may have gold and glory, but you at least have the cleanest patch of pavement in the kingdom. You enter grand drawing rooms in your mud-caked boots, tasked with sweeping up the finest dust money can buy. Your uniform is a sack, and a perpetually apologetic smile. The goal: make dirt disappear before the next afternoon tea. The risk: being mistaken for a family pet and shooed out by a governess with a feather duster. Let's step into your threadbare socks and wipe your boots as best you can, though in these houses even your cleanest footfalls leave suspicious smudges. The door swings open, and you're instantly hit with the heavy perfume of wealth, scented candles, beeswax polish, and the faint trace of superiority. The lady of the house doesn't greet you, she simply nods to a marble fireplace or a gleaming sideboard, and you know your mission. Sweep, do not be seen. Do not leave a mark, unless it's the before kind, to highlight just how thorough you've been. Your tools are both primitive and humiliating. A burlap sack for the real dirt, a faded cloth for the finer stuff, and a broom so frayed it might have belonged to your grandmother. The uniform isn't much: a patched jacket, a cap with the crest of a local dustmen's guild, for formality's sake, and an apologetic smile practiced in the reflection of many a polished urn. You must be invisible, quick, and always, always polite, even when your stomach growls louder than the grandfather clock. Your route is a who's who of London's upper crust. You sweep through rooms lined with imported carpets, shelves groaning under the weight of porcelain, and enough bric-a-brac to give even the boldest child nightmares. Occasionally, you're tasked with emptying the ashtrays or gathering the stray biscuit crumbs after a society gathering. If you're lucky, you might stumble upon a lost earring or a stray sixpence, though etiquette demands you return it, usually for a reward that doesn't even cover your tram fare. The humiliation is baked into the job. You work in silence while families bicker about invitations, marriage prospects, and the quality of the French cheese. Children eye you as if you're a particularly mobile piece of furniture, occasionally daring each other to poke you with a parasol or hide a toad in your sack. The governess watches your every move, feather duster in hand, ready to swoop down the moment you even glance at a cushion with malice. Let's compare. Modern cleaners might contend with robotic vacuums and eco-friendly wipes. You, the Victorian parlor dustman, are armed with nothing but elbow grease, wool rags, and the uncanny ability to sense dust from across the room. The modern deep clean is your daily grind. No cleaning spray, no power cord, just a whole lot of resolve and a working knowledge of the correct way to bow and exit backward. Hazards? Absolutely. You're on constant lookout for stray teacups, discarded knitting needles, and the family dog who treats your sack like a chew toy. There's also the risk of knocking over a priceless vase, or, far worse, leaving a muddy footprint that the lady of the house notices. If you're lucky, the worst you endure is a raised eyebrow. If not, it's a lecture on appropriate comportment or being sent to sweep the kitchen as punishment. Your social status is ambiguous. You're invited in but never offered a seat. You hear the secrets of the city's finest families, who's cheating at cards, whose souffle collapsed, who plans to run away with the footman, but your only role is to nod and move on. You become a silent observer, a ghost of the drawing room, with just enough presence to keep the dust away but never enough to actually belong. And yet, there's satisfaction. You finish each room, admire the streak-free shine, and feel a peculiar pride in making the upper classes comfortable, if only for an hour or two. At the end of the day, you trudge home, sack a little heavier, smile a little lighter, and dreams filled with carpets you'll never walk on without fear. But tomorrow you'll be back, dustcloth in hand, ready to sweep away another day's evidence of living. Because in Victorian England, even the most refined elegance leaves a trail of filth, and someone has to be brave enough and humble enough to collect it. Armed with a vinegar-soaked rag and absolutely no hazard pay, you're called in when someone starts coughing suspiciously. Your job? Fumigate rooms, burn bedding, and hope you don't catch whatever you're supposed to be preventing. Neighbours avoid your gaze, and children think you're a ghost. They're only half wrong. Let's creep into your battered boots. It's an anxious dawn in Victorian London, and already the rumours are spreading faster than the illness itself. The city is holding its breath. If someone in a tenement so much as sneezes, you're dispatched, part firefighter, part undertaker, part unlucky bystander. Your uniform? A heavy coat that traps every possible contagion, gloves too thin for comfort, and a rag drenched in vinegar you're supposed to hold over your face. Some say the vinegar is for protection. Others think it just helps with the stench of what's about to greet you. Your arrival is not exactly welcomed. Residents scatter, doors slam, curtains twitch. Nobody wants to make eye contact with the sniffer of doom. Children watch from behind railings, convinced you're here to spirit away the living, not just disinfect the dead. You don't blame them. Even you feel like a bad omen. If someone sees you coming, their day is guaranteed to get worse. The actual work is as grim as advertised. You step into a room thick with fear and the sickly tang of illness. The patient, if they're still alive, cowers under thin blankets. If not, it's up to you to dispose of the bedding, strip the room bare, and set about the business of cleaning, dousing everything with carbolic or lime, and dragging what can't be saved out to the street. Sometimes you burn mattresses right in the yard, smoke billowing into the sky as a warning to anyone who hasn't gotten the message. Stay away. There's no guarantee any of this helps. Medicine is at best experimental. Most of your tools are folk remedies, vinegar, herbs, and a prayer that you won't go home with a cough yourself. The doctors lecture about miasma, bad air, and you nod along, but deep down, you know the only real protection is luck and a strong constitution. Sometimes you share the job with a priest or a doctor, but most often, it's just you and the quiet dread that maybe next week you'll be the one needing a visit. Let's compare. Modern hazmat crews have bio-suits, ventilators, and at least a chance at surviving their shift. You, the Victorian plague disinfector, have vinegar, courage, and a remarkable ability to ignore your own nerves. You're sent into the worst rooms in the city, expected to clean and carry and burn, then walk away as if nothing happened. You go home with the smell of sickness in your hair and the worry in your bones, knowing full well that if the cough starts, you'll be on the other side of the door. Hazards? Everywhere. Fleas, rats, stray dogs, each one a possible plague carrier. The smoke from burning beds makes your eyes water and your throat burn, and your pay is barely enough for a hot meal and a few shots of gin. Neighbours won't stand near you at the pub, and even your own family is suspicious of your every sniffle. Socially, you're invisible until needed, then unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. But there's a grim pride in your work. For all the fear and filth, you're doing what no one else dares. You are the city's last line of defense, a moving barrier between the living and the dead, between hope and panic. Some days you actually succeed. A house spared, a neighbor grateful, a patient who gets well. It's not much, but in a city this size, even a little hope can go a long way. At day's end, you strip off your coat and rag, scrub your hands raw, and try to shake off the day's gloom. Tomorrow you'll be back, vinegar at the ready, steeling yourself for the next knock on the door. Because in Victorian London, when the plague comes calling, someone has to answer, even if it's just you, the sniffer of doom. You buy soot from chimney sweeps, then sell it to bricklayers and farmers who claim it improves their crops. The work is equal parts hustling and haggling, but mostly it's explaining why your hands are permanently black and your hair smells like an angry fireplace. You're not invited to many parties. Let's set the scene. It's a grey Victorian morning, and you're already on the move. Boots crunching over cobblestones and pockets heavy with coins at least on a good day. Your job as a soot broker is to navigate the blackest corners of the city, meeting with the smallest, filthiest entrepreneurs London has to offer. Chimney sweeps. Most are boys, some barely bigger than the sacks they carry, all with faces so smudged you only know they're grinning when you catch the flash of their teeth. Your first stop is always behind a row of tenements, where the day's haul, sacks of soot, still warm from the flues, is exchanged in whispers. The sweeps want payment, preferably now and preferably in coins that don't clang too loudly. You haggle. Soot is everywhere, but good, dry, powdery soot that's worth fighting for. Damp soot? Useless. Unless you enjoy explaining to a furious bricklayer why the mix won't set. You know every sweep by name, every shortcut through the alleys, and every trick for judging the quality of soot by the pinch, the sniff, and sometimes, regrettably, the taste. Your uniform is practical, if not presentable. Shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal arms that no soap can save, hair perpetually dusted with charcoal, and boots that leave a little trail wherever you go. A scarf around your mouth helps with the worst of the clouds, but the smell never leaves you. Some days, you think you must exhale smog. On others, you're just grateful you don't sneeze black anymore. The business side is a dance between buyers and sellers, each convinced you're cheating them. You haul sacks from sweeps to brickyards, ducking through back gates and down muddy lanes. The brickmakers want the finest soot to strengthen their kilns. The farmers, convinced by city wisdom, swear their turnips grow twice as big with a sprinkle of your special black. Sometimes you sell to glass blowers, who use soot for polishing, or to the odd apothecary, who claims it's a miracle for all manner of ailments. You nod, smile, and take their money. You don't ask questions. Hazards? More than you'd guess. Soot is slippery, and a dropped sack means not just lost profit but a black cloud that can stain half a street in seconds. The police occasionally take a dim view of street corner dealings and might decide your product is contraband, especially if they haven't received their cut. Soot gets everywhere, your ears, your food, and, most worryingly, your lungs. You develop a cough that could be mistaken for a steam engine and an immunity to being stared at in public. Let's compare. Modern salespeople worry about closing deals on phones or computers. You, the soot broker, negotiate face-to-face, soot-to-face, in a trade that's 1 part negotiation, 1 part physical labour, and 3 parts managing people who are as unreliable as a London summer. There's no contract, only handshakes and, occasionally, a quick sprint when a deal goes sour. Social status? Predictably grim. Nobody wants to stand next to you on the omnibus, and you're usually directed to the back door of any establishment you enter. You're too dirty for the merchants, and too shifty for the gentry. But you have your own community. Sweeps, brickies, farmers, and the market hawkers who always have a soft spot for someone who can keep a straight face while covered head to toe in soot. Despite the grime, there's satisfaction in your hustle. You're a vital cog in the city's engine, a middleman with no illusions but plenty of determination. You know the value of every sack, every shortcut, every nod and wink that keeps the soot flowing and the coins clinking. You keep the trades moving, the chimneys clear, and the city's crops mysteriously robust. At the end of a long, blackened day, you return home, boots trailing the proof of your labour behind you. You wash, sort of, count your coins, and prepare to do it all over again. You may not be the life of the party, but when someone needs a brick that holds or a carrot that flourishes, you're the one they call. In Victorian England, even soot has its silver lining, and you, for better or worse, are its broker. So here we are, at the end of another gloriously grimy shift in Victorian England. If you manage to make it through the night soil, the soot, the sewage, the rats, and the relentless humiliation, congratulations, your dignity might be dented, but you're somehow still standing, or at least still horizontal, drifting off in the warmth of your modern bed. Tonight we trudged alongside the unsung heroes of history, the people who kept the city running by doing all the jobs nobody wanted, nobody envied, and nobody ever wrote a romantic poem about. Their hands were cracked, their clothes were rags, and their work was as endless as the London fog. But still, they persevered. They laughed, they sang, they found pride in a swept crossing or a bucket emptied. Because even in the depths of muck, people find ways to keep going, to keep hoping, to keep telling themselves it'll all be better tomorrow. So as you snuggle under clean sheets, in a room free of rats, soot, and mysterious puddles, maybe take a second to whisper a thank you to the Victorians who hauled, scrubbed, and scavenged through indignity so that, someday, a warm shower could be a universal human right. Because history is proof that humans are resilient, ridiculous, and, most of all, resourceful, capable of surviving just about anything, even if it means getting laughed at by a passing goat. Drift off now, grateful for your comforts, and for the luxury of sleep after a long day of doing, well, anything but scraping gum off a duchess's shoe. May your dreams be free of leeches, and your job tomorrow involve nothing worse than an awkward Zoom meeting. Good night, and sleep well.